working with, it's good to be able to read things in books, but people with lived experiences that aren't just telling you what they heard about. Pastor has, again, the lived experience of a brother that's now doing really well. And I think it's important for us to continue to hear success stories. I had the pleasure of meeting Jamal Oxford's wife, Amy. She's an aide to Senator Dale Fowler. They came to the conference last year, and she told me a little bit about her husband's story. I'm like, that's amazing. I'd love to meet him. I'd love to find out what's going. If you have your program booklet again, you can read his full bio. But what I found really striking is he's an Army reservist. So I don't know if any of you are veterans. I know Dr. J is a veteran. So many times, unfortunately, our military can set people up for alcoholism and substance abuse. The things that they have to do and go for makes them such at risk. I don't even know why I said that, but veterans are also now dear to my heart. Thank you, Aunt Terry, for helping to educate me on that. Jamal Oxford, again, he's a community advocate in Harrisburg, Illinois. In the wake of 911 and his deployment in the Army Reserve Unit from Fairfield, both Jamal and Amy co-founded the SI Yellow Ribbon Campaign. Now, how's that for servant leadership? A grassroots initiative turning their concern for local troops into action. They got care packages, raised awareness. So thank you for your service there and here. After his military service, he is deeply committed to civic engagement. He's deeply committed to making the world a better place, as all of you. And he has a powerful story of redemption and restoration and recovery. Please welcome warmly Jamal Oxford.
Like I said, my name's Jamal Oxford. I am a person that is living in long-term recovery. My story is of one of hope. There we go. One of hope and redemption and forgiveness. It also shows that you can overcome anything you put your heart and soul and mind to it. It proves that if you don't give up on yourself, you can accomplish a lot more you ever thought in your entire life. A little bit before I get into the deep part of my story, talk about growing up. Growing up, my dad was a coal miner. We lived in Illinois, Colorado, Alabama. For the biggest part of my childhood, we lived here in Illinois, and then we lived in Marion, and then the big tornado in Marion came through, and it literally picked our house up, turned it upside down, and dropped it. Thankfully, our next door neighbor was at vacation. We was taking care of their dogs, and they had a basement, so that's where we was at, so everybody was okay. But our house was completely gone. So we went and lived with my grandma and grandpa for a little bit of time, and we moved to Mount Vernon for a short period of time, then moved out to Woodlawn, where that's what I call home, is Woodlawn. Then my father got hurt in the coal mines, and he got covered up. They ended up getting to him and getting him, and he was okay. But after that, he retired from Alabama. And when I was in Alabama, we lived there about 10 years. And while I was in Alabama, that's whenever I had joined the military. I went into the Army as a reservist, and I did that for 10 years. I got out of the military in 2007. When my dad retired from the military, whenever my dad retired from the coal mines, like I said, we was living in Alabama. And he moved back to Illinois, and it wasn't a long time before I did. And in 99, that's when I met my wife. When I met her, I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention to that part. One more. I met her, that's the first time we met. And it's funny, we was just talking about that just a few days ago with my daughter, because we met at the first time we met was at the Burger King in Harriet, which is no longer there. It's now in Arby's. We moved in together, and because I had just taken a job at our local sheriff's department working in the jail. It's something I always dreamed of doing, was working in law enforcement. My uncle, he was one of the longest reigning sheriffs for a long time in Williamson County. And it was a dream to be in the law enforcement. And I wanted to continue to help people like he did. Because he would sit around and tell stories all the time about how he did this, how he did that. And I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I worked at the sheriff's department for about 6 months, and I found out that our prison in Harrisburg was hiring. I had moved to Harrisburg, to be with my wife, and so they was hiring, and so I put in for it, and it took about 6 months or so to get on there, and that was fine because, like I said, I was working at the sheriff's department, getting experience. But those who don't know, working for a prison, it's good money, it's good benefits, and I had just started a family. Eventually, my wife got pregnant, and with our daughter, and I was also continuing my time in the Army Reserves. We lived in my wife's family owned a restaurant in Harrisburg, and we lived on top of it. So the rent was cheap, bills were cheaper, and as you can tell, if I look at him, I like to eat. So that was always a good thing. And I thought life was great. My daughter was born, and instantly I became that dad, all-in dad. And, okay, hold right there. I became that all-in dad. And I was that dad that, some dads would probably be embarrassed by, because she was my world. She was into baby pageants. I would go rent tuxedos and take her on the stage. I rented an Elmo costume for her first birthday because she loved Elmo so much. Dad disappeared and Elmo showed up. Then her second birthday, she was into Blue's Clues. So Dad became the dog, and she was just absolutely happy. And she was my entire life. When I finally got into prison, I loved every minute of it. Like I was living a dream. Here I was making great money. I had wonderful insurance for myself, my family, and a great retirement. And I finally felt like I'd have belonged to something. I thought that this is where I was supposed to be. Well, I was there for about 9 years, and I met some of the most wonderful people in the world, and I wouldn't change that for nothing. One more. All right there. I worked second shift at IYC in Harrisburg, and there was a fight that broke out in the gymnasium. And in juvenile, you have to respond to that fight. It's not something that can just let them fight out, let them get tired and jump in. You actually have to, to break the fight up. There was a big fight in the gymnasium, and I got hurt. And I had to have several surgeries. Okay. I tore my rotator cuff completely off the bone. I had nerve damage in my elbow, and I was off work for quite a while. But that's when things started really going bad for me, because as everybody who knows that when you get surgery, you get pain pills. I started taking one pain pill as like it was prescribed, and it made me feel good. Well, what happens if I take 2? Well, I felt this good. What happens if I take 4? After a while, it was up to 5 times a day, and it just went up from there. my wife and I started having problems. I was continuing the pain, taking the pain pills, because I thought my body was craving, or I thought I was hurting. But in actuality, my body was just craving a drug. Eventually, I would see up to 3 doctors at a time. I would go to 3 different pharmacies. I would make excuses to go to the ER just to get more pain meds. There was one time I went to my doctor because I had a real bad sinus infection. And the doctor came in. We talked about everything for a little bit. And I said, hey, while I'm here, I need to get a refill on my pain medicine. He says, Jamal, you've been on pain medicine a long time, and I cannot continue to do this. But I do have some samples out here for you to give you for your sinus infection, and let me go get it for you. So him and the nurse step out of the room. Well, I'd been to him enough. I knew where he kept the prescription pads. You know what I did? I grabbed that prescription pad. I've had so many prescriptions of pain medicine. I knew what to write. I knew how it looked. I knew it all, So I took the prescription pad and away I went. The doctor, he brought me in the medicine for my sinus infection and sent me on his way. The sad part is I knew how to write that prescription. I think today they don't allow that. I think that doctor actually has to call in or fax something into the pharmacy. But I got away with that for 6 months. I was going out of town, and it was a couple of days before my prescription was supposed to be renewed. And so I called the pharmacy and I said, hey, I'm going out of town. Can I come by and pick it up? Well, absolutely, Jamal. That's not a problem. You get refilled just in a couple of days anyway. So yeah, we'll go ahead and give it to you. So I went and picked it up. And about 20 minutes later, after I got home, I heard this knock on the door. So I went to the door and it was the police. Come to find out, the pharmacy had a phone call from my doctor's office, and they said, well, when I got you on the phone, I was going to tell you that I went ahead and gave Jamal Oxford his pain medicine early because he's going out of town. So she says, okay, that's fine. I'll go document it. I'll come back. That's fine. Well, come to find out, Jamal didn't have any pain medicine. And they, of course, they turned it into the police, and that's why the police is at my door. During all this time, I had lost my job at the prison. I went through the worst divorce that you could ever imagine. I pretty much abandoned my kid. And I went from that all-in dad to that dad that just really didn't care. I did get a different job. I was an office manager at an electrical facility, and I did all of the bills, the payroll. I did all of that. And I started writing myself 2 paychecks each week. The first paycheck was the actual paycheck, and the last paycheck was just nothing but from my habit, my addiction. I ended up getting caught, and I went to jail. I called my dad up. My dad and I, we were very close. And he came and bailed me out. He didn't ask any questions. He just bailed me out. Well, 2 weeks later, I got arrested again with the same charges, just in a different county. I lived in Johnson City at the time, and my dad lived in Benton. I went to see him one morning, and I'd cashed one of the bad checks in Franklin County. So now I'm getting arrested in Franklin County for that. So I have charges in Williamson County. I have charges in Franklin County. And I called my dad up again. Dad, I need you to come bail me out of jail. He said, no, son, that's not what we're going to do. We did it first way your way, and it obviously didn't work out. So this time we're going to do it my way. So he let me sit. And I had to have that hard decision to have that talk with him about me being an addict. He got me to a 28-day rehab facility, and I had to go to court. Since I was in jail, I had to go to court to get permission to go. So we went to court, and the judge was fixing to rule whether I could go to treatment or not. The state's attorney did not want me to go, refused to agree with it, said that I was just pretty much a menace to society. But the judge ruled that I could be let out of jail to go to treatment. I was going to be released to my father. This was on a Thursday. I didn't have to go to treatment until Tuesday. My dad stands up in the courtroom and says, Judge, if there's any way he can stay here in jail until Monday, I would appreciate it. Because if he's here, I know where he is. I know he's okay. If he's in my house, I don't know where he's at. I don't know what he's doing. And, of course, you can imagine the expression on my face. Turn around and say, what are you doing? You need to shut your mouth, Dad. So, of course, I was furious. The judge smiled and looked at me and said, that right there, son, is one dad that loves his son. At the time, I wasn't feeling the love, that's for sure. So Monday morning came, Dad picked me up, and I went to treatment. Before I went to treatment, we stopped at a local restaurant in Marion to have that 1 cup of coffee. So like I said, my dad and I were very close, and drinking coffee was our thing. And that's when he said something to me that changed my life forever. He said, son, he says, I love you, and I love you with all of my heart. And you are my boy through and through. But if you don't quit using drugs, I can go the rest of my life and not have anything to do with you. I will always love you, and that will never change. But that doesn't mean I have to be around you while you completely throw your life away. All because you won't help yourself. Well, that got the mind going. And from right there, I completely changed my life. From that moment, I've never had to take anything to get high again. At this point in my life, I was taking 12 to 15 pain pills at a time, 5 times a day, plus a $2,000 a week cocaine habit. I went to treatment, completed it, but those charges that are pending, well, they don't go away. And I think as addicts that we think we go to treatment and everything should just be wiped away, I guess you could say. All because that one person of us, they had died, and here we're a new person. We think we should get a new start. But our past wrongs are our past wrongs. We still have it. We have to make them right. I fought my case for the next 2.5 years. I was finally going to be sentenced in Williamson County, and the judge said, Jamal, of all the people that comes before me, you know the law. And what you've done here is highly, highly illegal. And I have to hold you to a higher standard just because that you do know the law and you do know what's the difference between right and wrong. After all, you did work for law enforcement. So I got the maximum security or the maximum sentence of 7 years, Illinois Department of Corrections. I was immediately taken into custody, but I still had that Franklin County case at the same time. And I was due to be sentenced on it just a few days later. At the hearing, that judge said pretty much the exact same thing as the first judge said. We have to hold you to a higher standard. And he gave me 7 years as well. So in my mind, I've been in jail enough. I know, okay, well, Illinois, it's day for day. So I'm going to have to do 3.5, and I could probably get good time for that. I can do this. I can do that. And then the judge says those sentences will be ran consecutive. And that got my attention. So I'm having to do the complete 7 years. So over the next 7 years, I took every self-help class that I could. I attended every type of meeting, every self-help thing that they offered. I was there. I was involved in it because I was a monster. And even though I had just went through treatment, I had to make sure that this monster was going to die. I had become that person that I hated so much. Also, during the next 7 years, every 10 days, my dad would come and see me. Didn't matter what prison I was at, he was there. He made sure that I always had money on my books for a commissary, and we would also often talk about, just what the future holds. I was in Taylorville Correction Center, and I was working in the employee commissary on midnights one night, and I decided to write my daughter a letter to tell her, at least tell her how sorry I was. But first, I wrote her mom asking if it was okay for me to do that. I hadn't been a dad. I was an embarrassment. I was the one thing in the world that they both hated. So I felt that it was right to ask first, and I owed her that much respect. She said yes, only for me not to hurt our daughter anymore. And I may get a letter back, and I may not. That she was not going to make her write me. But I had to be okay with that. Because after all, I had caused a problem, and I was a problem. About a month later, I received a letter from my daughter. And I'll never forget the first line of it. It said, "Dear Jamal." At first, I was mad. I was furious. Why isn't she calling me dad? But then I quickly realized that I hadn't been a dad. No Christmas, no birthdays, no nothing. She just got the raw end of the deal of her dad's addiction. We started writing letters. Letters turned into phone calls. Phone calls turned into something that I'll never be able to explain what it meant to me. It was 9 years, 11 months to the day. On December 28th, 2019, she came with my dad to Peoria at the time, to where I was at, to see me. It was literally 1 month shy of 10 years that I've seen. That day was bittersweet to me, still is. Because that was also the last time I got to see my dad. My dad's health was declining, and he was a bad diabetic. As I told you, he was a coal miner. He had black lung. And he just couldn't make the trips like he used to. Now, that picture there growing up, I'd always kiss her forehead when she was little. And to this day, that's the way life is. In that visitation here, I got to give my daughter that forehead kiss that we both needed and wanted for so long. COVID hit, and as you all know, like I said, I was at the Peoria Work Release Center, and I was scheduled to come home on my first weekend pass in almost 7 years. It was going to be super great for me because I was going to be able to eat real food. I was going to be able to sleep in a real bed. I was going to be able to smell real air. Every morning I would call my dad at 6:30, and he would have a cup of coffee and I would have a cup of coffee. We'd drink that cup of coffee together, and that's how we got through it. We still drank coffee together every day, even though I was locked up. He didn't answer. So I waited. 7 o'clock. He didn't answer. When 8 o'clock came around, he didn't answer. I called my daughter, and I asked her if she had talked to Papa, and she said that she hadn't. So I had her call the Benton Police Department and asked them to do a welfare check on him because something wasn't right. I knew he hadn't been feeling well, but I thought, okay, well, first off, maybe he just slept in. And that wasn't the case. This was on July 23rd. That's the day my dad passed away. I was able to come home on August 13th. So we talked about a lot about the future, what it would hold for me, what we would do, what I would do. And he never got to see me a free man. He never got to see me doing what I do now. To this day, it breaks my heart because I know how proud he is of me. I immediately went to work, put my life back together at a grain facility. And I ran into a gentleman that he had started a nonprofit group helping those with struggling addiction. We sat and talked for hours at a time. He was in recovery. I was in recovery. And I ended up going to work for him, do the exact same thing that I did, helping those going through court cases or in jail. I left there. I went to a health department in Harrisburg. I loved working there. It was a wonderful job, and I was able to do the same thing. Since then, I have left the health department, and today I work for the Saline County Public Defender's Office as a client advocate. I have spoken at 4 different drug courts. I have been a team member on 2 of them. I became a peer recovery specialist at the health department I was just talking about, and I did that for several years. I helped people that were going through the courts with pending charges get into treatment, whether it was inpatient, outpatient, residential, mental. I helped them any way I could. As I said, today I'm the client advocate for the Saline County Public Defender's Office. I work in the very jails and the courts that sent me to prison, just like I was at one point in my life. I help them get into the treatment they need, the resources to make a better day than yesterday was. I refuse just to let them go through the system without someone there to tell them that it's going to be okay. I've spoken at different facilities with groups of people that are in the middle of their treatment and trying to get away from the substances that control every move they make in their life. After I got home from prison, I was living at my dad's house in Benton. I was traveling from Harrisburg to Benton multiple times a week. It's 38.7 miles. I did it enough. But that was fine because I was able to go see my daughter and try to make up for lost time and prove to her that I was not the dad that always left her wondering, where is my dad? I would see her mom from time to time. We would speak and go about our way. One thing led to another. And in September, it will be our 2nd anniversary. We went to Florida, to Panama City, Florida, and my daughter actually was the one that remarried us. To say my life is complete, well, it isn't. I try every day to be a better person than I was just yesterday. I'm very involved in our church. I probably work 65 to 70 hours a week, and that's fine because I love my job. I love everything I do. I'm also a part owner of a media company in Harrisburg, and we stream all of our high school sports teams, sports. I continue to speak to those who need it to know that you too can rebuild your life. It's just a matter of how much do you want to put into it and not give up. Personally, I want more because life is way too short not to give it your all. This next one is just some pictures of us. It's me and my daughter. It's me and my wife. That picture right there on top of at SIU, that's when she graduated. She has a bachelor's degree in criminology. Kind of odd that the criminal's daughter goes to get the criminology degree. But the sad part about that picture, as she graduated college, that was the first graduation that I'd ever went to see her graduate. And I asked her, Callie, what do you want for graduation? She says, Dad, I want somebody, when they announce my name, I want somebody to have an air horn, and I want to hear that horn. I said, okay, I'll make it happen. So, of course, I go to Walmart and I get the air horn. We walk in there, and what do they say up on the thing? No air horns allowed. I looked at my wife and I said, what are you going to do? I said, what are they going to do? Send me to prison? Are you dead? So you know what happened. She got her air horn. I love quotes, especially older quotes. Go ahead. You may not be able to go back and change the beginning, but you can start right where you are and change the ending. That is something that everybody in this world can live their life by. C.S. Lewis was a very famous, very smart individual. And it doesn't matter where you are in life. You can change. It's just a matter of how much you want to do it. How much do you want to put forth to it? Me, I never do that. My wife says it's because I have a very hard head and I don't listen. She's partially right, but she don't have any room to talk either. If she was here right now, she would ask me, why aren't you showing the picture? I have a picture that I keep on my phone. And that's the difference from somebody in addiction and not addiction. The picture on the left was the last time that I ever used drugs. That was the last time I was arrested. That was 13 years, 3 months, 4 days ago. Before I end, I want to say thank you for listening to my story. I also want to thank Lynn and Training for putting up this amazing conference. If my wife is here, I'd thank her. Like I said, she's the executive director of the Fowler Bonham Foundation, also works for Senator Fowler. She's always doing something to help make somebody's life better. They recently went from a meal where they served a meal every week to the community to now it's where it's groceries, almost like a food pantry, and it's been quite the change for her. Again, thank you for listening to me and my story. And if you know of anybody with substance addiction that needs help, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help them in any way I can. Thank you.
He's got me sitting over there in a puddle. Wow, what a story. Jamal, thank you so much for your transparency, for the work that you're doing. You know, so many times when we go through things, I really believe it's not about us. It's about helping others. So thank you. I appreciate you.
You.
I love you.
You too.
You part of the your continued life.
Nice. I like that.